Hello and welcome back to the workshop. I can't believe I'm saying this, but this is the 20,000 subscribers special. 20,000 subscribers. That's fantastic. I know I've been massively inconsistent with keeping this channel up to date over the years, but it turns out I think it's going to be something worth putting more time into. So yeah, thank you for 20,000. It's really great. So I announced a little while ago that when I got to 20,000 subscribers, I was going to do a workshop tour and a Q&A at the end of it. And I asked you guys to put your questions on that post, and I'll get to that. But first I'm going to do the workshop tour because people have been asking for that in the comments for quite a long time. Yes, this is my personal workshop that is across the driveway from my house, which is on a farm in rural South Africa. Yeah, the only city most people internationally would know from this part of the world is called Durban, which is a big port city. It's like the city of eternal summer. I built this workshop in 2017 after moving back from Cape Town because I needed my own space. I needed 100 square meters of space, and it was just impossible to have that in Cape Town because the property prices there are just so expensive. So what I did was I had some savings and I took out a loan and I sold a car and I put all the money into this workshop, and I've slowly been upgrading it over the years. When I started, I didn't really have any like workbenches or anything inside here. It was just like the building and the lift. So anyway, I will start with the cars that are immediately behind me on the lift. So this car is my daily driver at the moment. It's a 1964 Alfa Romeo Giulia 1300 Ti. It's a South African built right-hand drive model. It is affectionately known as Porco Rosso, or the Red Pig, named after the Studio Ghibli film. It's definitely a bit of an odd one because it really doesn't run well, and to get it to run well is going to be a big job, but it's always reliable. Like, I know if I get in it and drive somewhere, it's going to get me there and I'm not going to get stranded. But I'm constantly filling it up with oil, changing spark plugs, and just fiddling with it to keep it going because it is, it's tired now. It's a really, I've used this car really hard. It's had a whole bunch of, it's had a hard life, really. It's fairly original. I mean, it's never been restored before and it's never been taken apart, but it has had a really hard life. It spent most of its life outdoors, so the paint is trashed. But yeah, what I like about it is that it has an incredible amount of character. It's a very sweet car. It's a fun car. It's yeah, and people seem to like it. People stop me all the time in it and they say how much they also find it charming. There's sort of like this little old car that's got faded paint, but it's still going. So above the 1300 Ti is the main project on the channel at the moment, which is a 1967 1600 Duetto Spider that I am doing to sell when it's done. The history of this car is long and quite stressful, and one day I might get to it on the channel, but until now, my official line on this car is that it's one that's being done to be sold to help pay for some of the other projects around here. It was quite a special car from the factory. It had an aftermarket steering wheel from a GTA, it had power brakes, it had quite a few options on it, and including a optional extra hardtop from Pininfarina. So quite a very cool car. There's not many like this in right-hand drive. This is a 1966 Honda C50 Super Cub that I bought about a year ago for roughly $150. Personally, I've always thought the Super Cub is a really cool little bike, and I don't know anything about motorcycles, so this is a good place to start. I have this bike as well as a Honda CD200. Well, I've got two of those actually. There's one in the back of the workshop completely stripped down in parts. The CD200 is a bit of an interesting one because it was a South Africa and Pakistan only bike. But I think they're like pretty cool as well. They're also super cheap. They're both just little cheap bikes that I wanted to tinker with to kind of learn about motorcycles because I don't know anything about them. Behind the motorcycles here, there are a couple of cars stashed in the corner. This whole corner of the workshop I refer to as the Never Never corner. It's essentially projects that I don't have a timeline for. It's stuff that I kind of started and then got like too distracted with other stuff to finish. Yeah, there are 3 cars and 3 bikes in this corner. So the first car up is a 1958 Fiat 500 Cinquecento, which is in quite a rough state. It's actually not mine, it's my brother's car. It just somehow found its way in here one day and has been stashed away ever since. You know what they say, possession is 9/10 of the law, something like that. Maybe one day I'll do like a build series on that car. Behind me there, that is a 1973 GTV 2000, which is a bit of a tragic story. It was my student car that I bought for roughly $1,100, $1,200 US when I was like a teenager and going to varsity. And it was just a cheap car that I kind of liked, and I found it locally. It was in some guy's garden under a tarp, not running, and I put a new battery in it and essentially drove it for years. With no problems. It was like my favorite, one of my favorite cars ever. However, I started having it restored and I sent it to a body shop, and I just made the mistake of letting somebody else do the work on it for me, and they did some really terrible work. It's covered in body filler and overlap welding and that. So I took it back and I stashed it there until I could fix it myself one day. Right in the back of the Never Never corner is this car, which is my favorite car. Like, I would never ever sell this, but it is spectacularly broken. This is my 1964 Julius Spring Gt. That was my daily driver from when I was about 22 through to about 25. That was my main car. It was my daily driver when I was in Europe and when I lived in Cape Town. If you don't really know the story of this car, this was the car that I drove from South Africa to England in, or to Ireland. But I ended up going all the way up the African east coast, through Egypt, through Israel, across the Mediterranean to Greece, all the way up through Europe, up to Norway in the middle of winter, eventually on to Ireland and then England. And I basically lived in this car for a year while traveling, and I just have like a really strong connection with this car, and it's the one car I'll never sell. But it is extremely, extremely broken. Essentially, it needs the whole outer skin of the shell removed, and then a lot of repair work to happen on the inner structure, and then a whole new skin put back on. I'm not sure when we'll be able to do that, but I will do it one day. And no, I'm never going to sell that one. So these 3 cars, the 73 GTV, the 64 Sprint, and the 64 Ti, are cars that I feel very strongly about. I've kind of said for a while that these cars are the cars that are being built to be kept. They are very sentimental to me. This one's just very unfortunate. I just kind of went about this the wrong way, like starting to restore it. Both of these, I should never have started restoring either of these, because I just have a tendency to get distracted. It's kind of the classic failed restoration thing, is where, guys start a project and they run out of time and money and stuff, or interest to do it. And that kind of happened on both of these. So I've stashed them away. They're dry, they're safe, and I'm definitely going to get around to fixing these 2 cars because they're both so important to me. In this corner of the workshop, we have the 1970 1750 GTV that I found in a shed out in the countryside. My original plan for this car when I bought it was to turn it into like a rat rod, and I was just going to leave it how it was, like in primer, and just build some cool suspension and a good engine and stuff for it. But then I decided that it was actually worth restoring properly, which is how it's gotten to this state, sort of stripped down completely and getting all the sheet metal work and everything done on it. Being a 1970 right-hand drive 1750, it's not a very common car. And the thing that makes it extra special to me is that it is a factory yellow ochre and black interior car. So a very desirable color combination. So I'm going to make sure that this one goes back together how it was from the factory. Behind the GTV in this corner, we have the all the mystery boxes, and everyone has a corner of their workshop that is like a complete mess and they don't want to go in there, and it's just like full of stuff, and this is my corner. I know that like in these boxes, like that one is full of interior stuff, that one's full of lights, and that one's full of electrical stuff, but it is a bit of a mess back there. I don't want I think, you know, like as the cars go together and I start unpacking these boxes, I can sort of get around to cleaning that up. But for now, it's a little bit, I don't really want to look at it. Now, this car is not mine. It's a car I'm helping out somebody with. It was going to be 1750 GTAM, 2000 GTAM type replica. And the restoration wasn't really going anywhere. It was sitting outside, so I'm going to take over it and do some work on it. Yeah, I usually don't build race cars. It's not my scene. It'll certainly be an interesting project to do something different. You can see it has the wide panels and stuff inside it, but this is quite a good straight car. Originally, this was a 1975 1600 Junior Deluxe. So this workshop has these massive glass doors in the front of it, which is something I did because I couldn't get a roll-up door to work in here. You can see there's a frame up there, which was part of the roll-up door assembly. That is still up there. Nothing would really fit here and work reasonably well. So I made these glass doors, and I actually prefer them to any roll-up door because the light in here is really nice. Right, this corner of the workshop is really where I do a lot of the work. And this bench is mostly storage stuff at the moment. It's a lot of parts and stuff down there. Here I have some parts for engines I'm working on at the moment. Like this is for a 1750 build I'm doing. This is for a 2-liter build. This is a transmission that I've recently done. That's a head that's finished. This is a transmission that I have to do soon. This is actually for the Spider. Yeah, mostly, yeah, engine stuff here. And I'm storing a whole bunch of, yeah, like this is full of, you know, cranks and hardware and carburetors and stuff down there. Over on this bench, where we have the Duetto Spiders 1600cc twin cam on the engine stand, and the rods and pistons from that engine as well that I'm doing some work on. Yeah, stored under here is the whole of the Duetto engine essentially laid out. Yeah, on this bottom level I have spare engine blocks and crankshafts, and on the other side there's some paint and stuff that I'm storing there. Up here, at the moment I have two 1600 blocks that are just up here in storage at the moment. Yeah, some tools. Yeah, this is mostly where I keep all like my tools and stuff, just hanging around here and on the shelf. Like there's like more specialist engineering tools up there, some power tools, and you know, fairly typical workshop stuff. Yeah, these workbenches they're about a year and a bit old now. I built these in 2018 because I couldn't really find anything on the market for a reasonable price that I liked. Yeah, so in conclusion, it's like workstation, the disappointing corner of Never Never, main project cars at the moment, daily driver, corner of, you know, Never Go There, and some more storage back there. Hey guys, just before we get to this next part of the video, I want to apologize for the interference in the microphone. I had my phone in my hand and it was interfering with the mic. Right, so now I'm going to get to the Q&A part of this. I put up a post looking for questions, and you guys did ask quite a lot, so I'm going to go through this and pick out a few questions to answer. All right, I'm just going to start kind of like from the top. You have the garage of a professional mechanic or restorer. How do you maintain a resource like that purely for personal projects? Well, it's not just for personal projects. I mean, some of the cars in here are being done to be sold and some of them are for customers, and I do some customer work, so it's kind of half-half. From Taicho, he asks, what job do you have? How did you get into vintage Alfa Romeos, and how does stuff work in SA compared to Europe? Like many millennials, I have to do quite a few different things to earn money. Alpha work is some of it, and I do like quite a lot of like independent freelance work. You know, like especially in South Africa these days, if you just had a standard 9-to-5 salary job, you would probably not make anywhere near enough money to own like classic cars and things like that. It's just like the nature of it, unfortunately, unless you're much older and you've had, you know, the last 40 years to build up some wealth. Most people my age are not going to have vintage Alphas in South Africa, especially just on a 9-to-5 salary. It doesn't work like that. How did I get into vintage Alfa Romeos? Luck, mostly. I was like 18 and I wanted a cool old car and Alphas were cheap, so I just kind of stumbled into it. I'm quite grateful that I didn't end up stumbling into a different brand, to be honest. I mean, like some stuff was just out of the question. Like I could never stumble into Porsche because, you know, vintage Porsches are and have been expensive for a long time. I was lucky that when I got into these cars, I was paying like $1,200 would get you a running driving GTV, so that was cool. Sneeze Cat asked, where did your love for old Alphas start and how do you fund this beautiful collection? My love for old Alphas really started with my 73 GTV, that was my student car. How do I fund this collection? Well, I'm trying to figure that out because you might have noticed that the only car that runs in here is the beat up Daily Driver. None of the rest of them run, so you need to figure out how to get the rest of the beautiful collection actually going. Technology Reboot asks, I was wondering how you got your start and if there are other people that want to get into building and restoring cars, how they could go about that. Also, how do you find so many good projects? Yeah, like I've said a couple of times now, I just started by happening to buy a cheap car that was a cool old collectible Alfa, and it just kind of snowballed from there. And I usually get cars offered to me. I tend to not go out looking for them. Like my 1970 GDB project, that came to me by, I just showed up at a coffee shop on a Saturday morning in the Julia, and some guy came up to me and said, oh, if you're into these old cars, I've got one in my shed and I want to sell it. Do you want to come take a look? And that's how I ended up finding it. So I generally tend to not look for stuff. Stuff tends to find me. Where do you get your parts from? And so do you work on Alphas full time? I mostly get my parts from classicalpha.com. They're a parts supplier out of London in the UK. And I restore and buy a whole lot of secondhand stuff usually. And do you work on Alphas full time? It's getting to be closer to full time than it has been for a while. Do you like resto mods as well as classic restorations? If so, have you seen the retro-powered GTV build with the Millington Diamond engine? Yes, I do quite like resto mods as long as they respect the original spirit of a car. I've got nothing against making a car as good as it can be, as long as you don't start sort of modding out of class, because there's no point in building a $300,000 vintage Alfa Romeo 105 with like massive horsepower in that, because it's going to become something that it never really was to start with. And also you've got to respect the minimalist styling that these cars had as well. So I'm not a big fan of like crazy over-the-top interiors and things like that. But the retro-powered build looks very cool. Daniel Oliveira asked, hi Jethro, one question about your mindset when you work. Repairing and restoring cars sometimes leads to losing control, being hungry, messing up, but in your videos you always look so calm. How do you set up your workshop and tasks to work in good conditions? This is actually a really good question. I'm sure like you guys, if you work on vintage cars, you get to that point where you're just frustrated and it's not going right. And yeah, I find like if I'm working and I feel that sense of frustration coming on, it's usually like other things are happening as well, like my workbench is a mess and stuff like that. So what I would generally do is try and recognize that feeling, and I will pack away all the tools, clean the whole workshop, set it back to like a good, set everything back to like how it should be, nice and clean and neat and tidy, and then start again. And then I generally find that sense of frustration is gone. And that's how you stay calm when you're working on stuff. It's like when you're trying to like push through that frustration is when you break stuff. Willie Minar, I enjoy your videos thoroughly and I'm looking forward to more frequent videos in the future. My questions are, will you be doing another overland trip sometime in the near or distant future? And if so, instead of a solo adventure, would you consider more people joining in on the journey? I would love to do another long trip, like another crossing continents, like on the road for months sort of thing. I would really love to do that. And I'm trying to work out a way to do that in the next couple of years. But I would definitely like to go with friends, because the last time I had a ton of fun and I met a lot of people, but there were some times where you just wish you had some friends with you, because a year on the road alone is a long time. And will you organize an event in the near or distant future where like-minded individuals could gather, admire each other's cars and hang out together? Yeah, like a meet and greet. I would love to do that. I think if this channel got to the size where I could do like a meet and greet in Joburg or Cape Town, or even Durban, that would be cool. Or even if I if we're allowed to travel ever again. Maybe like in Europe. Could you explain how the move to unleaded fuel affects 105 engines, valves and valve seats, impact on ignition timing? It doesn't really. Alfas have pretty hard valve seats. Let me prove that. This is the cylinder head from a car that I daily drove for a long time. This is from my 73 GTV. And I put a ton of miles on this car on unleaded fuel only, and you look at the exhaust valve seats and there is no regression whatsoever. Jared Toback asked, do you plan on finishing any cars before getting another one? Well, I don't have a choice now, do I? Like, do you see any space for more cars in this workshop? No, the Never Never corner is full. So I'm gonna have to finish something before I get anything else. In one of your previous videos, you mentioned that your interest in classic cars derived from your love of exploring and traveling. Yeah, having a vintage car when traveling around was really a good icebreaker. It helped people sort of open up to you, especially when you were going into a new town. It helped you sort of like meet people and that, which was cool. And you get to see a more local side of a lot of cities that you wouldn't usually do if you were just a tourist. So that's what I liked about traveling in a vintage car. It's a link to other people. Yeah, I find, a vintage car just helps people warm up to you. And when people warm up to you, you have a better travel experience because they'll show you their city or their country, and that's what it's all about, really. Are you thinking about traveling again once all of the coronavirus mess is gone? I would love to. I would absolutely love to start traveling again, especially in a vintage Alfa. Like, it would be a dream of mine to go and spend a few months road tripping around the USA or something, or Europe again in a vintage Alfa Romeo. Yeah. Why did you choose the Alfa Romeo brand? Yeah, it's really just luck and fate, I think. Like around the time I bought my first Alfa Romeo, I'd also looked at like some vintage cars. I had a Lotus before, and I looked at like some MGs and things like that. I didn't really know anything about vintage cars at the time. Alfa Romeo 105 series looked cool and they were very cheap. And then it was only after I bought my first one that I realized how good they were. So I could have gotten into anything. I'm just super grateful that I got into Alfa Romeo. Kirk Jackson asks, he says, I truly enjoy the content. I see some motorcycles in your garage. Would love to see more of your passion for bikes. And would be interested in seeing your local adventures on either 2 wheels or 4 wheels. Yeah, the bike thing is new to me. I don't really know anything about motorcycles, but I've had the same New Year's resolution for like 5 years, which was like buy a motorcycle and learn how to ride, and I've never done it. So last year I bought 2 very broken Hondas. So there's that to look forward to. What cars do you regret having bought? That one. How did you learn so much about cars? Did you work as a mechanic, or are you a natural car nerd? It's a combination of both. I have worked as a mechanic for a couple different companies, but all the restoration stuff is mostly from reading build threads online, sort of experimenting with stuff myself, and then I have a really great friend and mentor who's an engineer who lives nearby, who has owned vintage Alfas from like 1973, and he's taught me a lot as well. What's your next big road trip that you're planning? Obviously, like everyone else, I'm not planning any travel at the moment, but I would like to do a trip from here to Cape Town and back in my 1750 GDV when it's done. So that's a trip of about 4,000 kilometers. That would be good. Big road trip that I'd like to do, Tokyo to Los Angeles. That would be fun. Sebastian Schubert asks, which lighting and camera are you using? Lighting, it's usually just the LED lights in the workshop and a lot of the light, natural light from the big glass door. And my camera rig is a Canon 70D with a 24mm prime lens, and then the kit lens and a wide angle lens. And it has a Deity D3 Pro microphone on it. How often do you clean your ears? Probably not enough. Flip asks, what are your favorite tools in the workshop? Lift, for sure. The lift makes a huge difference, and my MIG welder. Those are the 2 that just make the hugest difference. Do you still have your 2000 GDV? How's it going? Yes, I still have it. It's in the Never Never corner. It's not going. That's the answer. Frehua? Gosh, sorry, I'm just butchering everyone's names. Has a lot of questions. How do you plan to restore your GTV? That one, the 1750 original, the 2-litre, a bit of like a rally type car for long distance road trips. Those are my plans for them. What are your plans for the future of your channel? I would really like this channel to grow and become something I could do a lot more full time. 3. If the number of views were to increase, would you consider YouTube and this channel to be your main activity? That would be nice, wouldn't it? Yes, I would really like it to be my main activity because... number 4. Do you wish it? Yes, it would be cool to do this full time. Also because the economy in South Africa is so bad that earning anything in dollars is great. So this channel could become a full-time thing if it becomes big enough. Would it be possible once one of your 2 main cars is finished to show us how it drives and the roads of your country? Yes, I would love to do some road tripping content for you guys with cars that are done. How much is insurance for your cars? Very, very cheap. Classic car insurance in South Africa is very, very affordable. I just have a mileage limit, which is like fine because I don't drive my cars that far, especially Porco. Porco has like a radius that you can't go, like it's basically like I can't go further than an hour because after an hour all the oil's burnt off and the engine will blow up. So yeah, what was the first workshop machine you got and has it turned out, and what's turned out to be the most useful tool that's helped you the most? Yeah, the first machine I went into this workshop was the lift, and it's also the thing that's helped me the most. I just can't imagine working on a vintage car without a lift. Phil UK Net asks, Jethro, you live in one of the most beautiful countries on the planet and your location is particularly scenic. Any chance of going beyond the workshop and showing us some of the surrounding countryside in the Dargle Valley? Yes, I could definitely do that. I think I'll do that. Do a little local road trip in Porco at some point. What are the 10 coolest cars in the world in your opinion? I don't know if I'm the right person to ask what a cool car is. Usually the kind of cars that I think are cool would be the ones that you turn up to, like to pick up a girl and date and she'll roll her eyes at you and be like, really? But I think you can't go wrong with the Alfa Romeo 8C, Competizione. That car I think is the coolest car ever. And then after that I think the Honda Super Cub's pretty cool. What's the best thing about owning an old Alfa? You meet a lot of cool people. People will come up to you and talk to you about the car, and I've met like some really good friends through that car. What's the most annoying thing about owning an old Alfa? Also, a lot of very rude people will come up to you and tell you about how terrible they are. And if you want to avoid getting into a fist fight, you just have to kind of nod and brush them off. Yeah, I just love how you actually daily drive a cool car, unlike most classic car owners. It's so refreshing to see. Yeah, at this point I can't imagine daily driving anything other than a 56-year-old Alfa Romeo. Raising Junior, he has a YouTube channel as well, which you should check out. He's building a 1300 Stepnose Junior. Hi Jethro, what's the build schedule like? Will you finish the Spider and move on to the next project? Yeah, like my plan is to finish the Spider and then move on to the 1750 GTV project again. Yeah, and once those 2 cars are done, then I can really consider getting into the Never Never corner and pulling the 73 out and working on that. Peter Weir asked, have you thought of trying another brand, maybe a Lancia? Yeah, just hold that thought. So yes, I have thought about other car brands like Lancia. This is my brother's car. I've driven it a fair amount, and yeah, and I've driven like vintage Porsches and Jags and stuff like that. But there's nothing that has the all-rounded, robust usability of an Alfa 105. I find not even like earlier or later Alfa Romeos. I find aren't as good as a 105. A 105 is like the ultimate all-rounder, in my opinion. So I've kind of just stuck to them. I always think it would be cool to have something else, and I would like, you know, be thinking about, I'd think about like an old, like a 911 or something right up until the moment where I just got another 105, because not that I could afford a 911, to be honest. Luca asks, what is your daily skincare routine? Gosh. Thanks for disrupting the video, Luca. I really appreciate it. Nothing. I'm sure I'm going to regret it in a few years. Right, so that was the 20,000 subscribers Q&A. I hope you guys like that. And if you're still here, you could click here to subscribe or here for more videos. Thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.